fought against a ghost dragon. You really think I'm scared of you, Pipsqueak?
Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2 is finally released, the day this video comes out. And understandably, some of you might be skeptical as to whether or not it's worth your hard-earned time and money. With the first game not even being that old, I saw a lot of folks upon hearing about the sequel's existence being confused as to why this wasn't just a patch for the original game, assuming that Nick were simply just trying to nickel and dime its audience, making them buy a whole new game for an improved experience. And even if I have to question the logic in that assumption, because, like, that's just how sequels work, but I personally was not one of these people. I played the first game to hell and back, even if I knew it contained many elements that held it back from being a truly great game. As is, it was a solid little platform fighter featuring some of my favorite cartoon characters, and a concept that clearly had a lot more potential given its immense hype and success, despite those drawbacks that seemed like they more so came from a lack of time and budget, rather than developers who didn't care like we're so used to with these awful license games. My main issues with it mostly came down to an overall lack of content for the price they asked for. Obvious franchises were missing from the roster, which was later helped through DLC. There was little to no game modes beyond a classic brawl, a bare-bones arcade mode, and an online mode that worked pretty well, all things considered, actually. But beyond that, I think the game just leaned too heavy into the competitive scene for my liking. It felt as if the characters were designed in mind with all these strong combos that if performed well could kill an opponent in seconds. Not automatically a bad thing, but it caused there to be a bit of a learning curve to it that, even if I did eventually get used to, I would have still appreciated a more well-rounded experience. The average online match was people who didn't know how to play the game at all, or were goddamn masters.
No, you're cheating.
You're gonna learn! This is the real world! You learn it early, son!
And so now 2 years later we have An Ass B2. Is it worth the price of admission? Does it expand upon and elevate what made the first release so fun? And most importantly, is this something I can see myself playing for years to come? Let's find out. Now, I gotta mention this video is actually sponsored by Nick All-Star Brawl 2. The team contacted me with a download code a couple weeks back and asked me to make a video. I was gonna do that anyways if my video from the other month didn't make that clear enough. I really like Nickelodeon crossover games and want nothing more than for them to succeed. But even then, like, you know me, I'm gonna be honest about how I feel, hand to God. God being Spongebob in this instance. And so without further ado, let's get into Naspa. First things first, by God, the presentation has seen a massive step up from last time. The menus, the character select screen, even stuff as simple as the UI have seen a tremendous leap in quality. There are so many additions here they didn't even need to bother with, like a jukebox featuring this wacky little Spongebob dance.
Who put you on the planet?
There's been a bunch of overall extras and customizable options that weren't necessary, but I think a lot of people are going to get a ton of use for. Such as the stages all having their regular versions, but select stages also feature variants depending on what you're in the mood for, such as 3 set platforms, moving objects, or just straight up nothing at all. The game is filled with these quality of life features that I was really surprised to see implemented. Animation and character models have also seen a massive upgrade. The first game having the task of translating a lot of these characters into 3D, some for the first time, meant some of them came out looking a little wonky in places. Like, these are characters that were probably never designed with a 3-dimensional space in mind, so ones like Danny looked quite awkward in places. But in 2BSAN, everyone's model has been completely reworked. Danny looks especially fantastic here. I love how they handled his flat face, and all the posing in his animations feel like direct translations of 2D artwork. It doesn't end there though. Patrick, Ren and Stimpy, Aang, everyone looks genuinely fantastic, and the larger variety of attack effects and sounds gives the game a bunch more visual variety and allows your attacks to truly stand out. I've seen they're even going to be going further with updating this stuff too. I saw on Twitter they were going to be making the camera more adaptive so it actually follows you around and zooms in and out depending on where the characters are, and it's simple stuff like that that shows they care about making this game as high quality as possible. Now, of course, the thing that was in everyone's mind with this game was the roster, and how it would look compared to the solid but certainly lacking cast of the original, which was further put into question upon the realization that a whopping 11 characters from the previous game would not be returning. And while I do miss a couple here and there, like I really enjoyed CatDog in the original and would have taken Lincoln Loud over Lucy, but I do have to acknowledge that other platform fighting game that shall not be named kinda spoiled everyone on the idea of roster cuts. Especially when you understand that cuts are just a very natural part of every fighting game franchise. And in the case of Nick All-Star Brawl 2, I think the mantra to go by is quality over quantity. Sure, there isn't that many more characters compared to the first, but it still runs out to a good overall size, and a majority of the switches here I think were for the better. I'd honestly take my boy Jimmy Neutron over Hugh any day of the week. Gerald was a cool addition, the Angry Beavers are great to see again, really love how they handled El Tigre, and even some of the characters from franchises already represented here got some fun inclusions, like having Plankton in his giant mech suit with references to the second Spongebob movie, Plankton's Robotic Revenge, and undoubtedly more I missed. Oh yeah, that's another thing, alternate costumes. A feature sadly missing and later updated into the first game, which still felt lacking with each character only receiving one alt that 9 times out of 10 was just character with a head. Instead here, each fighter is given 2 alternate costumes, with another one being unlockable, and even more through DLC. Got some really sweet picks here, like SpongeBob's Mermaid Man outfit, Band Geek Squidward, the Ant-Man Jimmy. Jimmy also has a yellow shirt alt based on the toys that came out before the movie. Fans of these franchises will for sure have a lot to chew on here when it comes to homages and references to the respective shows. Not only that, but this wasn't just a case of them simply grabbing everyone from the first game, adding a couple more fighters and calling it a day. Instead, each and every single fighter in this game has been completely rebuilt from the ground up, and from what I played, thankfully every single change was for the better. The original Nick All-Star Brawl could feel very cheap if you knew how to easily exploit a fighter's moveset. By far the simplest method of winning in that game was knocking an opponent off the field and then spamming your darn attacks so they'll never have a chance of getting back up. But I was shocked to see just how much the gameplay was reworked here. Every character still has a light and special attack, with your strong move being taken out for a charge move. And even if I do wish the light and charged attacks could be combined in some way, I think that's just me not being used to playing many fighting games. Once I reconfigured the controls and learned the movesets on my minions, it became increasingly easier and, more importantly, way more fun to pull off some crazy combos or see how long I could juggle an enemy in the air. Again, I don't play many fighting games, so I'm probably not the best person to comment on the intricacies of how it all works. But as a casual, all I can say is compared to the first game, it was way more simple for me to understand how this game works and get decent at playing it. I was playing this game for hours and hours at a time because of how much fun I was having. And if you were concerned about how much content this game has, then might I direct you towards the brand new campaign mode. Definitely what I was most interested in checking out. The only other platform fighter I've played that still shall not be named has been incredibly hit or miss when it comes to their campaigns, and so I was curious to see how Nick would handle theirs. How engaging could they make that cycle of killing enemies on repeat over and over? And I was later surprised to see that it ended up taking me a solid 5 or 6 hours to beat. And even then, that was just for getting to the end. I definitely see myself coming back to this and replaying it for ages. But I should probably get into it now, shouldn't I? The story features Patrick getting sucked into a weird star-shaped portal, with a mysterious voice calling on SpongeBob to come help save him and the other heroes from across the multiverse, from the clutches of Vlad Plasmius from Danny Phantom, with this voice being Clockwork from the same show. Of course, the story isn't going to be the most insane thing in the world, but I mostly just liked that they bothered at all. You have this hub world filled with different characters from Ninja Turtles, SpongeBob, My Life as a Teenage Robot, all of which your fighter has completely unique dialogue for when interacting with. Don't listen to Gur though, I think they forgot to pitch shift his voice.
I'm gonna sing my Doom song now.
This was probably what I enjoyed most about having this whole experience. We've gone from the first game not even having voice acting, to them bothering to give each and every character their own set of lines when interacting with other fighters and bosses. It made me want to replay it as many times as possible just to see how everyone reacts to the same situation.
I'll have to have Mom upgrade me so I can understand what snails say. Meow, meow.
Whoa, is it supposed to sound like that?
Meow, meow, meow.
Which is good, as replayability is the name of the game in this story mode, being a roguelike campaign where you have to traverse through a ton of stages one after the other, with your damage carrying over between them. And if you die, you get sent back all the way to the start. That sounds infuriating, but it hooked me immediately for a few reasons. First of all, there's so much variety in terms of what you're doing here. You can either be doing a one-on-one brawl against a mind-controlled fighter, a large group of enemies from different Nick shows attack you, which I was surprised at just how many different ones there were here. There's Pop the Balloons, a whack-a-mole type game, a platform stage, and like I said, the bosses, in which there are a solid 6 or so, each randomly cycling out with there being no set order, except for Vlad, who always appears at the end of the third round. I think it would have been very easy for this mode to get repetitive, especially with how much it forces you to go back to the beginning and start over. When you beat Vlad, there were like 3 separate times where I did it, and the game was like, oh no, something bad is happening, I need to send you back to the start of the game again, and do it over. But I surprisingly didn't care. One, because of the twist ending, which honestly I did not expect, that provides a reason for why you're doing this over and over again, but also because there's just enough here for it to always be kept interesting. I think this comes down to the upgrades and power-ups for me. Not only can you purchase items to litter around your hub world for some visual nods to each show, but you can also buy perks to take into the gauntlet with you, whether it be gaining an extra stock or upping your movement speed. Then once you're in the game, you can stop off and meet characters like Hugh or Gurr, who give you a free power up like your attacks doing more damage or the enemy getting a debuff when you attack them with a certain move. Then if you get 2 of the same upgrade, they stack. By the end of these things, I was a goddamn powerhouse. This allows there to be some fun management going on when getting through these. Do I go to a shop and heal some of my health, so I don't risk dying and getting sent back to the start? Or do I get an upgrade that'll make me stronger, so it's less likely enemies can kill me? I genuinely had a ton of fun with this mode and find it incredibly replayable, even if it is just to hear all the recorded dialogue they did for each and every character. Bravo, Nick All-Star Brawl team! It's not a perfect game now, I do have some criticisms, but like last time, they mostly come down to lack of time and budget. I understand if you can't insert all the characters from last time, but I think a good substitute would have been still keeping elements of the franchise in the game, even if the fighter isn't there. Like, what if we had CatDog stage from the first one return with them being in the background similar to the Loudhouse Castle stage with Lincoln? Also, I think the AI fighters could maybe be improved a bit. From all the 4-player matches I've done, they just kind of stand around when you're not fighting them, and I don't know if it was just an insane coincidence or not, but 2 of the AI fighters would always be the exact same character with the exact same skin. But I guess if you have friends to play with, then that's not going to be an issue. Also, the DLC coming out? Cool. Wish we had some new franchises. I really don't need 5 Avatar characters. Where's Fanboy and Chum Chum? Either way, I was extremely impressed with Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2. It is a vast improvement from the previous game, and my hat's off to Fairplay, Ludosity, and Nickelodeon for giving this series another shot. I think this team has proved themselves as being more than capable of handling future releases, which I'm praying we get. Hopefully if Nespa 2 does well, we can see a 3rd endeavor in the future, with even more characters and stuff to do. Because if this game is anything to go by, then I think this franchise still has a ton of untapped potential, and I anticipate a lot of people really loving this one. So if all this sounds interesting to you, then may I recommend picking up a copy of the game today? It just came out, so I'm sure online lobbies are insanely packed at the minute, so get on it. And thanks to the Nick All-Star Brawl team for their support on the channel. I got a really big video coming out this Saturday that I've been working on for like 2 months, so look forward to it. I also got a big announcement to make in that video, so stick around. Now if we could just have a talk about